we put together this podcast to meet data enthusiasts during COVID who might be able to share their mindfulness, their empathy, their little hacks that help them stay strong.
Right.
This is a community, I think, mostly of introverts. And a lot of the community members are like, I'm so excited we're staying home. So
yeah, I know I've adapted pretty easily myself. Well, there's this mixture in my group in terms of who's really happy and excited and who'd rather be in the office.
Exactly. So that's always a good place to start. So where are you on this? Are you excited that you've been home? Are you want to get back into the population of the coworker population, not regular population, but where are you right now?
Well, I'm kind of in between. I mean, I like the flexibility of it. Certainly, I've got a lot more work time available now because I'm not commuting. And being in New York, if you're commuting anywhere in and around New York City, you're going to have an extra length of time in the commute, even if it's across the street, for goodness sake. So that part I like. The challenging piece of it probably is more for me, just the scheduling aspects of it, because things can be back to back to back because I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so there's no, transition time from one thing to the next. I don't mind that, but it does make it challenging to do normal things like, I don't know, make some lunch or heaven forbid you drank a little bit too much water before the meeting and now you really have to use the restroom or something. So I've developed some code with my team. Listen, if I say I have to step away, that's code. You know what's up.
You bring up a point that I've worked on for the past few years is calendar. And time is something that I've been reflective on. I too used to go back to back to back. And I found, although your body and you believe you're superhuman and can go back to back, when I started really doing buffering between meetings, a few things happened. One, I was able to be a little bit more present in that transition from one to another. Two, once I got into the habit, I started to really be absolute with my calendar. Like I would hold those times as sacred, and I stopped making as many sacrifices on that time. I still get the work done, but when you go back to back, have you tried to stop that cycle? Do you like that cycle? What have you tried to make sure you are present in these meetings?
I'm actually adjusting it a little bit most recently because there's been a little bit more flexibility, being in the healthcare sector and being in the epicenter of the outbreak back in March. Not a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to take time because we were working essentially, round the clock and stealing time to sleep. But which is maybe strange when you're thinking about what a person does data analytics might be doing. It's that critical. But the challenge for me now just is the transition, because when I was working in the office, I had an assistant that was working on my calendar for me and would build in those cushions.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they had to be there because I had to move between different facilities in the organization. So
some of it is just travel time. He won't do. Oh, I forgot travel time. Yep.
Yeah, and for me now, it's learning how to do it in the new normal, where I'm kind of managing my own calendar frequently, and my message to other leaders in the health system when they're asking me for time, it's like my schedule is up to date. We're using Microsoft Teams most of the time. I said if you see a slot you need it, just put yourself in there, and that's kind of how it's been going. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's challenging, but it's a learning curve for me, just learning to adjust and adapt, and also trying to make sure I maintain some spots so that if my team wants to talk, they can see that, he's available, maybe I'll ping him.
Yeah. And what I've done with the team, our Monday calls, we do dial in, we don't do video. I talked about this before. Very sensitive to mental health, and just because your camera is off, it still means you're probably sitting or tethered to computer. So I want you to apologize for the ambulance going through on the street. I want you to apologize for the wind. To me, that means there's movement. That means we're out. I know what my team looks like. So I'm struggling with some of these. I think the only negative about the Monday phone call, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is when it's a phone call where like, is Chris on? Is Becky on?
Exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I haven't really tried doing it that way. It's just because we have a number of standing meetings. So I have some AVPs, directors, and managers, and I mean all of them understand that there's really a couple things that I need for them to do. Is I need you to be having a one-on-one with all of your directs regularly. That doesn't mean you have to jam them in one day or all in the same week. Some of them have larger teams, but there is an expectation that you're making those connections, and more so than ever, really encouraging them. Listen, spend the first few minutes of the time just talking about stuff, not work. Just talk to each other. So just find out how they're doing. Share your own stories if you want to, but just make sure that connection is going on. And then get to whatever you need to, but that's got to be an equal priority at this point because we're so physically separated. But the other piece of it is just the regular team meetings that are going on, and we're making some adjustments now. I think I've done a few different events over the last several months and realized that a lot of the things that people want to hear about, my own staff hasn't heard about. And so we're taking some times now to schedule happy hours. Just had a call earlier today. We're going to start doing those regularly, and we're going to rotate hosting responsibilities, but I'm going to probably try to do a recorded interview that features a different member of the team on a regular basis and really ask them about the journey, ask them what they learned from, what mistakes did you make, to try to help them kind of inspire the team that look, we're human, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But this is why it's so important to be honest with yourself and share those stories with people, because you can all learn and grow from it. So trying to do that along with the whole idea of being able to have a happy hour. It's like if you don't drink alcohol, no big deal. Whatever it is you want, have your coffee, your orange juice, whatever. But let's just talk. The agenda is not going to be work.
I believe it's a belief that the teams with managers or leadership that are leading with empathy like that are going to win. We've all had good bosses. We've all had bad bosses.
Yeah.
I think bosses that are good bosses maybe coach us a little bit more, ask you how you're doing. Maybe it's a surface question, but these are like, no, how are you doing? Like,
right.
not like, hey, I'm fine. Like, it's a good weekend. Like, no, generally, I care. How
right.
are you doing? And gosh, if you can get that employee that just can open up a little bit, because it's still a work-life environment. Like, and I'm constantly with our team saying, I need you to be mentally strong. What can I do to keep you mentally strong? Because if you're mentally strong in this really tough time, you will perform better. Right. That's my belief, right? Because I'm a senior leader and I still have bad days, but I've gone and doing self-reflection and other things. So I know how to get through it. How do you deal with it when someone's 22, 23, 24 and afraid to raise their hand, introverted, female, male? I'm 100% with you. It's a real question. How are you doing?
Yeah. And if you're introverted, I mean, this is probably the most challenging time you've ever been through in your life. I mean, I'm introverted to some extent, but I also enjoy interaction. So one of the things that's been extremely amazing for me is being able to have conversations with people just like we're having right now, it's via camera, but at least having the opportunity to meet more people and talk about people who are dealing with some of the same challenges. And even with my teams, one of the things that I hope we never lose, even if we go back to some sort of a blended work model, is the connectedness that we have because we're seeing each other in a different context.
Yeah.
So, I was on a call a couple of days ago with my home management team, and one of my managers was holding her daughter. And I love that. I love seeing the pets come through, or hearing those sounds. Like, it's just like we're people
Human.
first. We're people first. we're not just the employee that's moving a widget or something.
Yeah. And it's where what I did here with this podcast, and we are recording this, and you have this fantastic screen. I want to talk to you about the what's behind you as well. But what I also wanted to do in March or April of last year is when I had that intuition, feeling, or just common sense at times of like, it's going to be here for a while. I really tried to upskill my video presence.
Right.
I feel very comfortable now, but I wasn't. Where is the camera, where to look, how to do the lighting. And I'm still surprised with how many people, both senior and junior, business people, data science on, are not taking the time to get their video presence right. Like your lighting, awesome. Like your background, I can actually see you. I've been on calls where I'm like, the sun is in the wrong side, or that I understand you're in front of your bay window, but if you can't see yourself, I too can't see myself. So it's not a pleasurable conversation because I do this, not so I look good. I do this so you feel like we're in a conversation. So I appreciate you looking that because it's just more engaging. And have you seen the same thing on your team? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting thing. I don't know how some of the other executives are doing it, because I haven't seen some of the things that they might be engaged in. But I mean, I know for myself, there's been probably easily a couple of dozen things that I've done like this, and I learn every time. There's different platforms that are better than others. Sometimes the platform makes the difference in whether my lighting is good or not.
WebEx, it crushes my lighting. Like right. WebEx just washes me out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do little things like you can't see. I can move it up, but you can see there is a microphone here with a windscreen.
Yeah.
But little things. I kept experimenting, with little things. I mean, I probably spent too much money playing around trying different cameras and different mics. But I think I got some things that are working for me at this point. I think that the fun thing is, I had to do things so that it didn't feel weird for me to be staring into an object. And so what you can't tell is I have a really big flat screen monitor in front of me, and the camera is actually up about 1.5 inches into that monitor. And so I'm really looking at you, and it's not precise, but it's pretty darn close to looking out on into the camera.
You and I are separated at birth. I've got my ring light. This is my 4th microphone. And I keep going with more expensive microphones. And you're right. My camera is like in front of the monitor. So I can't really see me. And it looks like I'm looking right straight through it. And I'm right. Cause I too had the tendency of like looking down and I'm trying to teach also mentor, coach, and our team is that the importance of what you're doing, of what we're doing here, because it just makes these calls. And where I still struggle is going back to it is like, what is the pace to have, video with a team? Like, I'm still not sure. I know what my team looks like. And if I'm not doing a shared screen, I'm still struggling with that because I still leave days after being on Zoom for all day, and I'm just exhausted. Like,
yeah.
And then I and if I'm exhausted, I'm gonna just kind of go out and say, I guess my team is gonna be exhausted. Like we were on a lot of the calls together.
Yeah. I think the majority of the meetings that I have, there's shared content being reviewed. So primarily, it's just whoever is actively speaking to the content, will put their camera on. But where some of my larger meetings where we're doing a review of what's in the product, the project queue or whatever, we'll do those just with audio and look at the shared screen. Good. But I just try to make sure that, like, I'm talking to my managers, at least on the Monday call that we have.
Yeah.
I've asked people if they're comfortable to just put the cameras on. I'm not going to throw a fit if you don't. But it would be great to see you. That's the only time we're going to be really connecting all together at the same time.
Yeah.
Usually. And then one-on-ones, I try to do those with cameras on with my leaders. And then I have touch points with my senior team every day for at least 30 minutes around noon time. Most of the time we're just doing audio, but we flip the cameras on.
That's right. Yeah. And tell me about the background.
It's one that I saw uh, early on when this whole thing came out. They just put this great big mural in our corporate office, and I thought, wow, that's phenomenal. And then I was working on an article back in the spring, and they needed some stock photos. So I asked our marketing people, and they sent that to me, like, oh my gosh, that is the perfect background.
So good.
And so that's what I went with. It's the whole idea of the healthcare heroes, and one of the things that has become unbelievably moving for me is seeing our frontline people and what they've done. I mean, to say it's heroic is probably about as understated as I could be.
Can you share things that you've seen? Because you are
Yeah,
the front line. I'd love to dig in here.
sure. Well, I think one of the things that was really remarkable early on, as we were trying to figure this thing out, that people maybe have forgotten because it's been in our thought process and in our mind for over a year, probably about just about exactly a year now. We didn't even know how to diagnose the thing. It wasn't even a coded uh, condition when we started. So we were looking for things that seemed like they could be flu or respiratory issues or whatever. And we were iterating through this thing and agonizing hours on end, having touch points multiple times a day with some of our clinical people. And so one of our physicians, who's an assistant chief medical informatics officer, who's also a practicing physician, he came on one of our status calls late in the afternoon one day, and you could tell the man was exhausted. And then he apologized. He said, I apologize, I'm running a little bit late. He got a little bit emotional sounding. And then he said, you okay? And he shared with us that he'd just come off a shift where he lost 8 patients in one shift. And in all of his years of practicing medicine, he's never experienced anything like that. And it was just devastating to the guy. But these kind of stories, I would hear them with regularity. And then when I would get on the news and watch things, and the governor's doing his talks every day, and we're basically hearing from the TV things that we now have to do because we're in lockstep with the state house in terms of how we're going to operationalize the management of the influx of patients we're having. We're having to work through doing load balancing between not only our own hospitals but with other hospitals within the region as well. But some exceptional leadership stepped to the forefront like I've never seen before. We were unbelievably well prepared, as much as you can be, for something like this, because the executive team has spent a ton of time really working through what are these types of massive disruptions that could occur that we need to be able to know that we have a plan for. So a pandemic was one of them. Hurricane was one. Hurricane Sandy was in recent memory in New York, of course, was a massive event. So that was pretty fresh. So they really took all the learnings from that and they changed a bunch of things to be better prepared. But in the midst of the kind of the settling moment, once we passed the peak and we saw, 2 or 3 consecutive days we were discharging more patients than we were admitting, we said, okay, now we have to start doing some planning. So what if there's a resurgence and a hurricane, major power failure? Like, do you want to throw in maybe locusts or something?
That's so crazy.
But that was as much as I thought, oh my gosh, I hope that can't happen. We did see a hurricane come through. It wasn't Hurricane Sandy but it knocked out power for the majority of Long Island for better part of a week.
I remember that. Yep.
In the midst of things, thankfully the pandemic was still kind of well contained, as much as you can possibly consider it to be in New York. Anyway, we're now hopefully nearing the peak of what we now know is a resurgence here. Not anything remotely close to what it was back in March, but during the time, I would hear talks. We'd have from time to time our CEO would post a video for the teams. He was doing interviews and such, and the man he's not a young buck. I'm sure. I mean, I have no idea what his his personal health conditions are, but just being north of, I'm guessing 65 or so, there's just by the very fact that you're in that age bracket, you probably have some risk factors. He walked every floor in every hospital during the pandemic, checking in on the team and talking to them, finding out what they need, and would mobilize things on the fly if he saw that there was a need and people needed support. Just making sure that the staff was connected and they knew that they were being supported and they were being heard. I've never seen leadership amazing. Like that.
Amazing.
You know, that's selfless if I've ever seen it.
And on that, you have the CEO walking the floors. We know there were masks and other things needed. What? Right. Any insights on things that were not the obvious? Was it more soap in the bathroom? Was it more snacks in the snack machine? Like what else? I mean, we know the three obvious ones, which were mission critical for health. Anything else that was like, wow, let's get more M&Ms. Let's get more something. Well, what else did they want?
There were a lot of things that came up, but I mean, it's hard to, there probably are some gaps that I'm not aware of. But so much came out of the woodworks. I mean, people were just supporting us like I've never seen before. So food deliveries being brought in to take care of the staff. I mean, people volunteering their time to do those types of things. Of course, we had celebrities doing things, calling in on a Zoom call or something to thank people, to encourage them. We shifted we started what now is going to be an annual thing to around Memorial Day to honor our veterans. We did it in New York City. The first year we had a handful of folks that came in. I think it was Boys to Men, Gavin DeGraw. The big headline with Radio City Music Hall was Imagine Dragons. All done to raise money for our veterans, and really highlighted that partnership that we've had with our veterans. And then this year we transitioned it. We had some folks like Megan Trainor was part of it this year. A couple of I'm trying to. I hope that I'm not too many right. Just see this and say you don't remember me. But we did live events with them over Zoom. And we featured, different members of the staff at our different hospitals. We did a lot of video features, showing them, doing the work that they do, being the heroes that they knew that they were trained to be. Yeah. I saw video of nurses going home and seeing their children on the porch and waving to them, and then going through the process of taking all the protective gear off, disappearing to go shower before they could go see their children. Situations where I saw one physician getting onto an elevator, and his family had come up to meet him, and you see his son reach out to get him, and the guy just kind of held his hands up and said, "You got to stay back," and you see the tears. I mean, so many different things that we experienced, and we just saw the best of people and who they are. I think in this day and age, particularly over the last several months, I think we've lost sight of some of that because of all the other dynamics we're dealing with in the country. But that piece of it for me has stuck with me, and just reminds me that I'm doing data and analytics, but still it's all about people.
I really appreciate you sharing that story. It is the first time we've kind of dug into that with a guest who's been seen and lived through it at that level. And thank you. There's a loss here for words because I too consumed it on TV. Mm-hmm. I had a couple friends that were part of the food bank organizations that would organize food into the hospitals, and every night they were just hosting like telethons to raise money so it was supporting the local restaurants and then bringing it to the nurses.
Yeah. What was super to see is that if you're in New York City, and I could see it on the TV news every night, it's like big shift change when the nurses and doctors were changing shifts. Everybody was out ringing bells, cheering for them in the streets. the municipal workers, the fire department, the police, they were all showing up and applauding them and as they're coming and going. I mean, it was just a remarkable thing. And I'm grateful that able to see it.
What is interesting now, as we have a little bit more insight, and now we can look back a little bit of the knowledge. When I look at it from like just a data point of view, and I look at the California numbers, I was living in San Francisco. I'm part of the San Francisco exodus out of San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And they thought it was low in March or high in March, and then it's like even higher. And I'm just thinking like maybe the line was just the wrong line. I don't know. The other thing I'm also excited about is how fast they got to a vaccine, because I was watching the news and Bill Gates, Sanjay Gupta, pick a voice. It's 18 months, 18 months best case, 18 months. Yeah. So I'm just kept on saying, okay, 18 months. And the fact that it came out January, December, I'm like, wow. Like, because the best of the minds were said 18 months.
Yeah.
Like it's, and like you said,
I was hearing the same things. I never imagined that it would be this way. And now we're working crazy now. This less than a year later from when we kicked off, working on making sure we're getting the vaccines out and making them available. There's a tremendous effort going on right now over the next week or so to stand up some community sites.
You bring up that 18 months because now you're right. It's that next phase of vaccines. So my parents, aunts who are older, were able to get on the list. No hookups. No, I mean, we were just hitting the site every day, and like one day it opened up and we got on. Like they got on.
That's amazing. You guys in Florida are doing it really, really well.
What I haven't done, what I'd like to do is I keep hearing younger people or anybody should run to hospitals at the end of the day, because if they haven't given out the vaccines, you might get lucky. So I want to do that. Florida just said, if you don't live in the States, like don't come here to get your shots, because that's all they want to right now is name, birth date. That's all you needed. I think a very minimal bar to get on it.
You're just making sure you don't have any symptoms sort of going on. It could be adverse.
And so now, when a few more minutes, I just want to dig in here. So now, going to the positive. So let's just be positive and say spring, the vaccines will be available for everyone who wants them. Let's just go with the newsreel. Middle class, upper middle class, just going to pick on that class of people. When do you think they want to go to Puerto Rico or away for Christmas vacation? Because now I'm thinking you get the vaccine, second one, like between like September. Are you saying, not you, but I just wonder if there's just going to be this big travel push of like, okay, I didn't go away last year. I didn't do anything. I have a couple bucks in my pocket. I'm going. Or do you think everyone's like, nope, I'm staying home? It's a weird question, but when do you think people can get back on the plane here?
I think in terms of getting back to the level that we're accustomed to, I think we're still quite a ways from that. There are people that are making trips right now because they can go dirt cheap, frankly. Right. And so they are. I have had the occasion to fly one time in the last several months because I have two sons, neither of which live here in New York. So I finally, after almost a year, I said, I got to go see my son in Nashville. And so I did that, understanding I'd have to be tested and all that kind of stuff, which is whatever. But that's still part of the reality that folks are dealing with. I mean, it's still until I think we hear from the airline industry what their stance is going to be, what they're going to require. As of right now, the only people that are required to test, generally speaking, are ones who are coming in from outside of the country. But in New York State, when I came back from Nashville, I was met with a contact tracer, at the gate, and then had to provide some information. And then every day they were pinging me just to make sure I had no symptoms, which, I appreciated that. That was comforting to me that they had that machinery in place. But, the whole idea of achieving herd immunity to the place where people start to feel comfortable and confident again, I just don't know what that looks like. The other piece of it, obviously, is the economic uh, aspect of it, because there's a lot of people that are hurting out there. Their things have been disrupted. I mean, there's several industries that have taken such a massive hit. These are people's lives. People that might need a break. I don't know if they can afford it.
That's why I wanted to clarify. I don't know that bracket, but and to that, I just saw like Godiva Chocolate just closed all their retail locations. Like Godiva Chocolate, it's like pick a mall, you always see a Godiva Chocolate. Think of that retail.
Well, think about the guys that are selling suits. I mean, Brooks Brothers went through bankruptcy last year.
That's right. You look great. I mean, I always wear Brooks Brothers shirts. I've retired my white Brook, and you look great. I've retired my Brooks Brothers shirt, I think March last year.
I went into the corporate office on 2 occasions. The first time I wore the tie. The second time when I got there, they said, "You don't need that." So I took it off. But that's been a major change. Back to the positives of this thing. I'm sorry for my dry cleaner, but I'm not having to pay the dry cleaning bill so much. Dog
walker, dry cleaner, yeah.
Right. I'm not having to spend all that money on gas. A lot of upside to it, but it also impacts people's lives, and that's the part that really still is. Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah. And I think when I kind of look at even this conversation, and I think about everything we covered, it's the positive is it gave, I think, the world some time to slow down. It gave the world and Mother Nature, you've seen that with the O2 emissions, and it just gave us a nice little pause. And
it's been a major reminder for me to just stop and just connect with people. We need each other. I mean, and if you want to go and build yourself a career and you don't think you need people, you're going to have some hard lessons unless you started your own company and you've been running it kind of at a distance successfully for a long time. If you're trying to get there, you got to understand how much you need people.
And even to this, why I even started the show is this, to me, is a great day. I got to meet somebody. I got to see, to me, this is, and we just got to hang. And I always say, we would have bumped into each other on a flight, at a hotel lobby bar, at a Giants game, at a Jets game, at a baseball game. We would have, it's just kind of like forced serendipity, but don't kid yourself. I needed this more than you needed this, or maybe you needed this more than, but again, I think when I have these conversations, this is photosynthesis. This is my sun, because I don't get to meet people.
I feel the same way. I think, somebody asked me about, what I've done to get through it. And I said, honestly, if it weren't for being able to do things like this, I might very well have lost my marbles. Because it's in my face every day, because I'm in the healthcare sector. I'm seeing the stuff. It's real. And the work it has been extraordinary. I mean, don't misunderstand me. I'm probably about the most blessed guy in my position anywhere in the world. I've got a team that's second to none, and they'll work around the clock, no questions asked. They're just amazing.
Amazing.
But it's just been, for me, the most valuable piece of it, just being able to connect with people, just talk.
It's war. It feels like it feels exactly like what Bill Gates said in his tech talk. The next war will be this type of war. Are we ready? And it's there's still loss, and it still feels like a battlefield, but we're all globally fighting this together. This was great. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being on, giving us some extra time. And we are a community that are built based on mindfulness and empathy for introverts, to lighten up their day. And so thank you. It's super cool.
Aaron, it's been my pleasure. I really appreciate the invitation to hang with you today.
Yeah, no, same.
Do it again sometime.
And when I get to New York, I don't know when, we'll try to grab a drink. But I hope that you get to Miami before I get to New York, which means maybe we'll play golf or just grab a drink or something like that.
Well, I am totally up for that. Both. I have 2 brothers, both living in Florida. One's in West Palm, and the other is in Mims, which is just near Daytona Beach.
I love it. I love it. Well, we got plenty of room. As our governor would say, come on down.
Right.
All
Well,
right.
I will be in the Sunshine State at the first opportunity because I've missed it. I would go 2 or 3 times every year, either to see my brothers or
I
vacation.
love it. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, this is the Data Standard. We're sponsored by Pandio. We appreciate all the time you give us, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.